So I've been out in the shop for the last few hours doing some dry fire practice, slinging some fake rounds at some B8s and dot tortures and having a grand old time with my Enigma in my normal dress. And I figured I'd sit down and take a little video to talk about not my initial impressions, I already talked about those in one of my earlier videos, but my secondary impressions and observations that I've made while carrying it, and some of the configuration choices that I've made to kind of optimize it to my specific figure and dress and firearm, etc., etc. So some of you probably have seen the first video that I did when I first got it and I first put it together, and I put it on and kind of initially adjusted the straps, and then I threw on pretty much the most extreme example of what you could wear with the most extreme example of what you could conceal at the same time, and kind of just walked around. I kind of walked around, I looked at the mirror, I checked profiles, I did some moving and stuff like that, and then I did my initial impressions video. In the initial impressions video, it was very favorable. I liked what I saw. I liked how it stayed in place. I liked how stable it was. I liked how comfortable it was. Very, very, very impressed. But at the same time, that was an extreme example of how you would conceal and how you would dress while concealing. And that's not, it isn't typical, and it certainly isn't typical of me. It's that kind of dress, that in public, is something that I would never do. I don't dress like that. I for 20 years, since I was a kid, I've been a button up with a t-shirt and jeans kind of guy. This is how I dress. And because this is how I've always dressed, it's always been relatively easy for me to pretty effectively conceal a full-sized handgun and the extended magazine and my medical that I keep in a back pocket kit. So I've never really had an issue with concealment, but I have had an issue with comfort and ergonomics, because I live out in the woods and we do a lot of stuff outdoors, and I'm carrying outdoors, and I typically carry while I'm working out in the back property, because we have animals that we have to deal with. And so when I'm doing that kind of stuff, and I'm running a chainsaw or running a tiller or something like that, a lot of times you got to bend over, you got to move stuff, and that's when having the belt and the holster tied to your pants can be it can get really old really fast. And so having the Enigma to be able to isolate my firearm from my clothing, at least for me, it wasn't so much a matter of improving my ability to conceal or allowing me to conceal a larger gun under the same clothes, because that's never really been an issue. But it very, very substantially increased my longevity of carry, because typically when I'm working out there, I'll whatever gun I've got, after 2 or 3 hours working in the woods or even in town, I'm just struggling. Sitting in the car for extended periods of time, because I've got a really bad back and I've got sciatic nerve issues, all these different things. Having that belt, putting all that tension to keep the gun in place and keep the magazine in place, has always been a struggle for me, especially with the pain that I deal with. Having the Enigma there allows me to isolate the handgun from the pants. So my gun is isolated from my clothing, which means that I can loosen this. I can loosen my belt and have my pants be nice and loose, and my gun isn't going anywhere. That allows me to bend more easily. It allows me to twist and move more easily. It allows me to sit for extended periods of time more easily. And then when I'm ready to get up, I just pull that tight, and we're back in business. I'm walking into the store or whatever. So that's been the primary benefit for me as a carrier, is is being able to increase my comfort without reducing my concealability. Because a lot of other options that people have used, belly bands or elastic belts, that get out overstretched, and then the gun starts to flop and it doesn't stay in place. All those things I've tried and they all failed. They all sucked. So I got rid of all of them and ended up just saying, you got to suck it up, get a proper belt, proper holster, and just deal with all the discomfort. That really isn't an issue anymore. The Enigma allows me not only to adjust the tightness of my pants, but it allows me to move the Enigma around so I can get the right spot and I can just keep my pants where they are. I can adjust my mag holster. If I need to move it further this way or further that way, I can just put it exactly where it's going to be the most comfortable, and then I'm all set, which is a huge plus for me. Now, I've actually made a couple of changes to mine, and the primary reason is because of the big buckle, which is, I've moved the big buckle off to the side. I used to have it in the front here, but I found that the combination of the big buckle plus the mag carrier plus my pants plus my belt ended up having a really thick multiple layer issue on this side. On this side, there isn't really much you can do about it, but my belt has a very thin strap that I can line up with the holster, and it really reduces that profile on the outside. So that's how that's set up. But I moved the main buckle over here, which makes it easier. No, oops. Apparently it makes it easier for this to come loose too. But it makes it easier for me to conceal my mag carrier relatively comfortably. Unbuckle that little, there we go. So that's how, so you can see here, I got mine set up with the belt kind of on the strong side, with the buckle kind of on the strong side. So when it's sitting on my hips, it sits just like that, and I got a nice clean front. Very clean. And I use an elastic extended magazine holder. I think this is a Snake Eater. Yeah, Snake Eater Tactical. It works really well. It's nice and low profile. Holds the magazine exactly as far as I want it without going too deep or too high. I found that basically the low and inside connection points are the best for me in keeping everything tight to my body and giving me enough clearance over the top of my pants to be able to get that nice high, nice strong firing grip, and being able to mitigate the push out from the bottom, because I do have a wedge that I use to keep my large grip of the Glock 45 to keep that nice and tight against my body like that. That's how it's set up. And so when you take that configuration, you combine it with my particular style of dress, I guess you could call it, but the way that I dress and the way that I conceal. For me personally, it wasn't really an improvement on my ability to conceal a handgun, because my body type and the dress decisions that I've made for years had kind of already put me in what I would consider an optimal combination of factors for me to be able to conceal effectively. So if I was standing here with my standard light bearing holster and mag carrier with my belt all in place, and not the Enigma, I would probably look about exactly the same as I do here. And that would be that. Where the benefits for me come in play are basically all of the other aspects of concealment that sometimes don't really get the critical consideration that they should. So for me, being able to adjust my clothing kind of on the fly without moving my holster, being able to kind of hike my pants up. If I feel like I need a little bit better concealment, I could hike the pants up and it kind of streamlines everything a little bit better. You know, it might push the gun in a little bit deeper. See, it covers a little bit more, but I still have access to it. It's just a little bit deeper than otherwise, and I could literally push my magazine down to the edge of the belt if I need to, and that pretty well maximizes that concealment. Okay, so that aspect of it means that I could wear a different kind of shirt, or I could conceal just underneath the t-shirt because it's going to be right at the belt line, those kind of things. And then if I need to, if I feel like there might be some issue, now mind you, this would be under the concealment garment, but I could just kind of push everything down and out of the way, real calm like. So let's say if I'm typically carrying up here to maximize my concealment, but let's say I'm in a situation that maybe I wasn't paying attention enough and some factors changed in my environment and I feel like something might happen. And I feel like I maybe don't have the ability, or I might be losing the ability to get out of there inconspicuously without drawing attention. I could just kind of push everything down, still trying to keep a neutral posture, not trying to draw attention, but simultaneously, while I'm doing this, I'm clearing my handgun for a nice wide open draw, and I'm clearing my spare magazine, or actually what I think I'm really strongly considering doing is ditching the spare magazine for a wider medical kit here, so I could carry some essentials, some gloves, a TQ, and maybe some shears. And then I can do that, and all of that is happening underneath my cover garment. That I could never do before. That nobody could ever really do before. I've tried other independent things like belly bands and other things like that to kind of get my holster off my pants, because I deal with, you know, back pain and hip pain and old wounds that I've had to deal with. None of them really worked. They all end up in the bin, just like all the other holsters that I've had to deal with. But being able to do this and nobody knows I have a gun, or being able to do this where I feel like I might end up having to use a gun, and I'm just sitting like this, and the other cool thing about that is it puts my hand right at the hem of my cover garment. So I ended up, my hand's nice and low, my finger's on my cover garment, something happens, and I'm there. I'm there pretty easily. And being able to do that means I don't have to telegraph as much, because my hands are already nice and low, even though they're still in my pockets. My hands in the pockets is always a nice neutral posture. But hands in the pockets with your finger on the hem of your cover garment, ready to draw if something would happen, is not the same thing. Looks like it's the same thing, but it's not. So this right here, being able to do this and still be almost completely unnoticeable until I do the old beer belly. But this isn't something that you could ever do with a belt. And then, you know, if it feels like things are calming down, or if I've gotten myself extricated out of that situation, back to normal. Back to normal. So that's kind of where I'm at with my Enigma. I like it a lot. I've had to make some changes. I've had to do some critical thinking about how to prioritize the way that I dress and the way that I carry. But it's definitely opened up a lot of options for me, and it's definitely opened up my eyes to things that I can do now that I couldn't before. And in my case, I think that it's done more for my ability to effectively carry a handgun than anything else that I've paid for other than training and ammo. I don't think there's another peripheral that I've paid for that I can put on my body that can hold a gun that has changed how I carry and how I think about carrying as much as the Enigma. Yeah. I'm going to keep evaluating it over time. I'm sure as I continue to use it and carry it and wear it, I'm going to find some other things some other understandings that I don't currently have right now. I'm sure I'll have other observations to make. And, you know, if any of them are substantial enough, I'll let anybody who wants to know. So, but if you don't have one, I would strongly consider investing in one. I think it's a great investment. And even if it's not something that you end up using as your primary concealed carry system, because I know that there are plenty of people out there whose concealment setup as it sits, the way they have it right now, is good. It works, and for some people it can be difficult to justify that kind of an expense on something that doesn't even have a holster with it. But when I look at all the things that it has allowed me to do, and all of the ways that it has improved my quality of life as a concealed carrier, the cost-benefit ratio is really, really high. So, like I said in my first video, I'm definitely getting another one. My mom already has one on the way. My two brothers have one on the way for them. So we are very, very quickly becoming an Enigma family. And I would suggest considering getting one for a loved one that you have who might be trying to figure out how to open up their personal concealment capabilities. Because more than myself, who already kind of had concealment figured out, I kind of felt like I knew what worked and what didn't for me. People like my mom. My mom is a 60-year-old tiny little Asian lady. She's 5'1", maybe. And the way that she dresses, the clothes that she wears, she doesn't wear belts. She doesn't wear pants that can use belts. She wears long skirt dresses, things like that. She wears clothes that they don't lend well to concealment. And for the longest time, it's been she has her CCW, she has a subcompact pistol, I think it's an M&P Shield. And for the longest time, she's had it, but she hasn't been able to carry it because she doesn't want to off-body carry, and she couldn't find something that worked. She couldn't find a configuration that worked. Now we have the Enigma on the way. I'm going to get that set up for her, and I'm confident that it's going to make a big difference for her. And that is important to me. That's important to me. And knowing that there is a product out there that specifically addresses those issues that concealed carriers have, who don't fit this kind of guy profile of concealed carry. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty game changing. So you should get an Enigma if you don't have one. If you do have one, you should get another one. And that's what I think about that. All right. See you in the next one, guys.